talking about pregnancy is a little bit presumptuous, don't you think? On the other hand, every guy has at least one X hormone. We're at least halfway there. So I'll use my X hormone as hard as I can and try to leave my Y to one side. It's smaller anyway, right? Last week I was talking about faith, which is the first theme in our historic themes of Advent, and I compared it then to a woman who learns she is pregnant. And even when you're hoping to be pregnant, when that's the plan, the actual fact of being pregnant is almost microscopic when you learn about it. I mean, an embryo that's maybe a third of an inch long is making enough racket in your body to give a test the positive. And I don't know of any woman I know who's been pregnant who can say, oh, there it is. It's something you kind of have to believe as well as hope. You have to let the doctor or the home test tell you, and then when your brain believes it, that's the faith part of being pregnant. You believe it. Even if it is true, you still have to believe it because you have no evidence of it. And I noted last week that at that moment of faith, you have to be either all in or all out. As they used to say, you can't be a little bit pregnant. You've got to be all in. And so we give ourselves, and women give themselves to something they only know in a kind of abstract or hopeful way. And they turn their whole lives over to something they don't really know by experience. Of course, one of the famous definitions of faith is that in the New Testament, the Christian scriptures, that says faith is the substance of things hoped for, which is a beautiful and utterly meaningless phrase. But as I said last week, sometimes if you look at it through a different lens, maybe the differences can come out. And this week I want to talk about hope, which is almost as vague and abstract as the word faith. And they're hard to separate. Remember, the phrase said faith is the substance of things hoped for. So how are they different? Well, let's look at it from the time that maybe you were pregnant or your wife was or your spouse. Everyone who has ever expected a child has someone who comes up to you and asks, so what are you hoping for? And they're letting you fill in the boy or the girl part. But we all know the correct and appropriate answer is a healthy child. And thanks to modern medicine, that is that's a reasonable hope. You can almost depend on it. Over 90% of the births, of the deliveries in America are healthy ones for both child and mother. So it's a pretty good odds that things will come out okay, which is why baby showers are happy and festive. And of course, how many of us who have children started building the crib or the changing table beforehand? I know I did. You have to be ready after all. My mother came to wallpaper the little room in the parsonage where we were living. It was gender-neutral, pale green, little bitty flowers with tiny yellow dots. It was really pretty. And those who were here last week know that the end of our first pregnancy ended in an unexpected way with a stillbirth. And yet, we were still thinking there was a child in our lives. Coming home to a nursery without a baby to put in it, that was hard. You see, hope, boy, girl, or healthy child, is for something very specific. You want that child, that person, that outcome. Like the students in Sam Levinson's class, they wanted to buy that gift. Not a $3 gift, the $10 gift. And when that doesn't happen, you feel like a failure. I know we did. What did we do wrong? Nothing, it turns out. Neither did the students in Sam Levinson's class. Because a hope, no matter how pragmatic, no matter how reasonable, no matter how likely, is still a little bit uncertain. For example, if you go to work every morning, do you get up and think, I hope the office is still there today? I mean, in an existential sense. Do you doubt its existence? Similarly, when you come home, do you doubt the existence that your home will be there when you arrive? These are not useful things to think because everything suggests that they're still there. But now and then, they aren't. Imagine how the people in Honolulu felt on December 7th, 1941. It was a beautiful beautiful, warm Sunday morning, like every other day in Honolulu. And then it wasn't. Hope dwells between the dependable and the grandiose. Depending on who you are, that the same hope can be both dependable and... Here's an example. Lots of people want to get rich. They hope to be rich. I'm going to give you two different people for whom those hopes exist, but they're not the same hope. If you're Donald Trump, I like picking on Donald Trump because he invites it so well. He wanted to be rich. The good news was his dad was, so it was easy. If, on the other hand, you live in a slum in Mumbai or in a favela in Rio de Janeiro, it's a grandiose hope. Jeff Foxworthy, the comedian of the rural and the working class, distinguishes between working class people and middle class people by saying middle class people have retirement plans, rural class people have the lottery. And he's not being unreasonable. Because in a lot of parts of the world, some hopes are so far away they're equidistant. But I want to talk about hope in a more particular sense of the word. That is to say, hope that really matters, the hope that we can depend on. In the weekly passages from the Torah and the Gospel this week, we see grandiose dreams in abundance. For example, Joseph is telling his brothers how he had a dream in which they all bowed down to him. There's a grandiose dream if you ever heard one. And what was the result? They sold him into slavery. It's okay to have big dreams, perhaps, but it's probably not wise to share them too publicly. In the New Testament, in the Gospel of Luke, the father of John the Baptist is prophesying how his son will be a prophet of the Most High. God does not also tell him that he will be beheaded later. Sometimes our grandiose dreams can lead to a fall of another kind. And in fact, in the Bible, people who climb up high fall very, very far indeed. So the lesson here is that we should have responsible hopes, respectable, reasonable hopes. But what are those? Well, let's go back to the pregnant woman model. Cut to the bone. What every pregnant woman hopes for is life, hers and her child's. And I submit that our spiritual life begins with something just about as basic. An act of faith, if you want to call it that life matters. Every day you get up and you don't end it, you're deciding life counts. And that's a brutal way to put it, but Albert Camus, the great philosopher, put it that way himself. We have all decided life matters. And the next thing we do is to say, how can I be sure? We bet on life and then we look for the way we can make it come true. All hopes, all real hopes, genuine, heartfelt hopes, are hopes that we will find out that life, my life, matters. Stories that religions tell are just stories that say life matters. But well before religions are involved, you and I vote for life every day with hopes that just keep us going from day to day sometimes. People in the recovery movement, you know that bumper sticker as well as I, one day at a time, and that's not a sitcom. That's real life for people dealing with questions around alcohol. If they can get through today, it will be a victory. And sometimes if you're sick, you get through an hour, and that's a victory. So you hope for what keeps you alive. I submit that by the time people come in the door of church, they've already answered yes to life. They already have a few hopes, and they're just looking for someone to say, keep at it.